He was born into billions, but traded it all to mop floors. When a billionaire heir goes undercover as a janitor to find what real life feels like, he discovers friendship, love, and the ugly truth about his own family's empire. But when his secret explodes in front of everyone he cares about, the question becomes, will he use his power to fix the system he broke, or retreat to the world that made him blind? What would you do if the only way to find truth meant losing everything that ever defined you? The hum of fluorescent lights filled the empty corridor as Daniel Whitmore, now Dan Miller, tightened his grip on the mop handle. The smell of disinfectant and old tile replaced the polished scent of his penthouse. He had traded marble floors for linoleum, silence for the squeak of rubber soles. Tonight was his first shift as a janitor at Whitmore Dynamics, one of his family's many subsidiaries, a place where no one would suspect that the man sweeping their floors owned them. Daniel had told himself this was noble, research for empathy, a way to understand the lives behind the company name. But standing under the buzz of a flickering light, he realized how naive that sounded. He wasn't a hero. He was a man hiding from the empty applause of boardrooms and charity galas, searching for something real. "Hey, new guy." A voice broke through his thoughts. Sarah, the night supervisor, smiled as she handed him a stack of gloves. Her eyes carried the kind of exhaustion only single parents wore, half dreaming, half surviving. "You'll get used to the smell," she said. He chuckled, trying to mask his nervousness. "I'll take your word for it." In that small exchange, something stirred in him. It wasn't pity, it was admiration. She didn't have the luxury of escape, she worked 2 jobs and still managed to laugh. As the night dragged on, Daniel's hands ached in ways they never had before. The weight of the mop felt heavier than any corporate decision he'd ever made. Marcus, another janitor, eyed him suspiciously. "You don't talk like the rest of us," he muttered. Daniel forced a grin. "Guess I just grew up around too many books." Marcus shrugged but kept watching. By midnight, Daniel found himself cleaning the CEO's office, his father's. The irony wasn't lost on him. His reflection glimmered faintly in the glass wall, caught between 2 worlds, the man he was pretending to be and the one he'd left behind. He looked down at his hands, blistered, raw, and strangely alive. For the first time in years, he felt something real. Then the elevator dinged. Footsteps echoed. The last person he expected to see at this hour stepped into the hallway, his father. The alarm rang at 4:30 a.m., slicing through Daniel's sleep like a cruel joke. He had never woken up this early in his life, not for meetings, not for flights, not even for the gym. Now, bleary-eyed and aching from the night before, he stumbled into his work boots. His reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror hardly resembled the air of Whitmore Dynamics. By the time he reached the building, Maria, the shift supervisor, was already barking orders. "Miller, you're late by 3 minutes. That's 3 minutes the trash waited for you. Don't make it a habit." Her tone was firm but not unkind, the kind born of decades of being ignored by men in suits. "Yes, Daniel said, forcing humility into words that had always commanded instead of obeyed. He soon met Jorge, a quiet philosophy student with weary eyes. "I clean to pay for my classes," Jorge said, twisting a rag. "Funny, eh? Studying ethics while scrubbing the floor of a company that forgets we exist." Daniel smiled faintly, but inside, the irony stung. Then there was Tom, gray-haired, bent-backed, loyal. 30 years of service, yet still mopping the same hallways. "I keep thinking one day they'll fix the heating system," Tom said with a chuckle that wasn't quite a laugh. "Been broken since '09. Guess we're not cold enough yet." As the hours crawled by, Daniel's muscles screamed. His palms blistered, his shoulders ached, but what hurt more was listening. Delayed paychecks, ignored repair requests, equipment that hadn't been replaced in years. These weren't statistics in a report, they were people carrying the weight of decisions his family made in air-conditioned boardrooms. At lunch, Daniel sat with them, sharing cheap sandwiches that tasted better than any five-star meal he'd had. For the first time, he felt the pulse of real life beating beside him. "Hey, Miller," Maria called, waving a stack of papers. "Corporate's reviewing contracts next week. Rumor is, they're cutting staff again. Maybe even outsourcing." Daniel froze mid-bite. Outsourcing. His family's favorite word for replace people with profit. He forced a steady breath, masking his panic. "You sure?" Maria shrugged. "That's what I heard from upstairs." As the crew went back to work, Daniel's mind spun. He wasn't just pretending anymore, he was standing in the middle of the storm his own bloodline had created. The hum of the floor buffer faded as the night shift slowed. Most of the crew drifted toward the break room, but Daniel lingered near the vending machine, watching Sarah Chen wrestle with a stubborn bag of chips that refused to drop. "Come on," she muttered, giving the machine a frustrated smack. Daniel chuckled. It's a cruel world when even snacks don't cooperate. The bag finally fell, and she grinned, a real, tired grin that reached her eyes. Victory. She handed him half without hesitation. "We share in this house of pain." They sat on the cracked bench near the supply closet, a nightly ritual that soon became their quiet escape. Between sips of cheap coffee and the scent of cleaning supplies, conversation began to flow like music, unpolished, honest. Sarah told him about her younger sister, Emily, who was the first in their family to make it to college. "She wants to be a nurse," she said proudly. "I promised I'd help her finish, no matter what it takes. 2 jobs, no sleep, it's worth it." Daniel listened, every word cutting through his carefully built wall of privilege. "You must be proud," he said softly. "I am. But some days," she looked down at her hands. "Some days, I wonder if I'll ever get to chase my own dreams again. I wanted to teach. But dreams don't pay rent." Her words hit harder than she knew. He had spent his whole life surrounded by opportunity, yet never once felt its weight. Now, he felt the cost of it, paid in exhaustion, not currency. When she asked about his story, he hesitated, caught between truth and the life he'd built to hide it. "I'm estranged from my family," he said carefully. "They're well off, but I wanted to see who I was without their money." Sarah nodded slowly, eyes soft with understanding. "That takes courage," she said. Daniel forced a smile, guilt coiling inside him. Her belief felt like sunlight he didn't deserve. As they cleaned side by side later that night, their laughter echoed through empty hallways. For the first time, the building didn't feel cold, it felt alive. But when Sarah said, "I'm glad you're here, Dan," the warmth twisted into something heavier. Because he wasn't Dan. And every moment he let her believe he was. He was digging the lie deeper. The executive floor gleamed like a different world, thick carpet, spotless glass, and the faint hum of computers that never slept. Daniel pushed his cleaning cart down the hallway, careful not to let the mop bucket squeak too loud. Up here, silence was sacred. Through the frosted window of the boardroom, he saw shadows move, 2 executives, sleeves rolled up, sipping wine while laughter echoed between them. He wasn't supposed to hear, but their voices carried. "If we move the cleaning contract offshore, we save at least $2 million annually." "Exactly. Labor here's too expensive. Besides, janitors are replaceable." Daniel froze, his hand tightening on the mop handle. Replaceable. The word rang in his ears like an insult. Jorge's hopeful eyes. Tom's weary smile. Sarah's quiet determination. None of them knew their jobs were already being priced away by a spreadsheet. When the room emptied, Daniel quietly slipped inside under the pretense of wiping down tables. A folder lay open, cost optimization proposal. He scanned the pages, heart pounding. The plan was weeks away from approval. Not just outsourcing, cutting benefits, trimming hours, restructuring non-essential staff. People with names, lives, and rent. He took photos of the pages with his phone, his hands shaking. He told himself it was for evidence, but deep down, he knew it was guilt driving him. His family's signature gleamed on the final page. The irony stung. Here he was, pretending to be a janitor to understand the real world, while the real world was quietly being dismantled by people who looked like him. As he left the office, he paused by the window. Down below, the city lights shimmered like stars, millions of lives working, surviving, unseen. He wondered how many of them were affected by decisions made in rooms like this. Sarah's voice echoed in his mind, "Dreams don't pay rent." He wanted to tell her everything, to rip the mask off and fight for her, for all of them. But he couldn't. Not yet. The truth would destroy everything before he had a chance to make it right. Just then, the elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped out, eyes narrowing. "You're up here late, Miller. What are you doing?" The auditorium smelled of popcorn and fresh paint. Folding chairs creaked as Sarah waved Daniel over, her face glowing beneath the soft stage lights. "You made it," she whispered, eyes bright with surprise. "Wouldn't miss it," he said, sliding into the seat beside her. Her sister, Emily, appeared on stage in a thrift costume, her voice trembling but passionate. Daniel clapped along with the crowd, but his focus wasn't on the performance, it was on Sarah's expression. Pride radiated from her like warmth in winter. Every laugh, every cheer, every tear belonged to her. He felt something shift inside him. He'd been to galas where the wine cost more than most people's rent, surrounded by people who smiled but never felt. Yet sitting here, on a wobbly chair beside a woman who'd worked double shifts just to buy her sister a bouquet of dollar store flowers, he felt more human than ever. After the play, Sarah introduced him to her family. Her mother insisted he eat. Emily shyly offered him a cupcake she'd baked herself. They didn't know who he really was, but they treated him like one of their own. The simplicity pierced him deeper than any luxury ever had. As laughter filled the kitchen, his phone buzzed. He slipped outside. 3 missed calls, Whitmore executive office. His father's assistant again. He silenced the phone. For tonight, he didn't want to be Daniel Whitmore. Back inside, Sarah caught him watching her. "You okay?" "Yeah," he said softly. "Just, haven't been part of something like this in a long time." She smiled, not realizing how literal his words were. "Then you should come around more often." For a fleeting moment, he imagined it. No secrets, no lies, just them. But reality clawed back fast. She didn't know that the man she trusted was the same one whose family might take her job away. Later that night, walking home beneath flickering streetlights, Daniel replayed the evening in his mind. Her laughter, her kindness, it all felt painfully real. Too real to protect with lies. He reached for his phone again, thumb hovering over his father's contact, torn between two worlds. He could still stop the outsourcing. He could still fix this. But to do that, he'd have to become Daniel Whitmore again. Marcus had seen plenty of new hires come and go, young, wide-eyed, and gone within weeks once they realized mopping floors wasn't a side quest, it was survival. But Miller, there was something off about him. Too polite. Too clean. Too careful. It started small. One night during break, Jorge was venting about the broken vacuum motors, and Daniel had said, almost absent-mindedly, "We could file an internal report through procurement." He'd stopped mid-sentence, but Marcus caught it. No janitor he knew talked like that. Procurement? That was corporate language. Marcus didn't say anything then. He just watched. Another night, Daniel removed his gloves to stretch his fingers, and the fluorescent light caught something that didn't belong here, smooth palms. No calluses, no scars, no stains of work. Marcus felt a flicker of anger. People like him earned their calluses. They told stories of every unpaid hour, every aching night. The final straw came a week later. Daniel was scrubbing baseboards when his sleeve slid up, revealing a sleek silver watch, subtle, expensive, unmistakably designer. He yanked it down fast, but not fast enough. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Nice watch," he said casually. Daniel froze, pretending not to hear. "What was that?" "Nothing." Marcus's tone was mild, but his eyes said otherwise. That night, while Daniel cleaned the elevators, Marcus sat in the locker room scrolling through his phone. He couldn't find a Dan Miller that matched the man's vague backstory. No social media, no address history, nothing that fit. The guy was a ghost. Marcus had been burned before. 5 years ago, a corporate consultant came snooping around, asking questions about cleaning costs. Weeks later, half the crew was gone. Some never found work again. He wouldn't let that happen twice. He began keeping mental notes, Daniel's shifts, who he talked to, the questions he asked. And then, one night, he caught Daniel taking photos of documents in the executive suite. Marcus's heart pounded. He watched from the shadows as Daniel lowered his phone, guilt etched across his face. Got you, Marcus thought. He didn't know who this man really was, but he was going to find out. The rain outside mirrored Daniel's mind, steady, relentless, impossible to ignore. He sat in the janitor's lounge, the hum of vending machines filling the silence, staring at the email he wasn't supposed to see. Outsourcing plan, Phase 1, implementation begins next week. His throat went dry. Sarah, Jorge, Tom, all of them, gone. The walls felt smaller as he scrolled through the details. His father's name was right there in bold, approving the transition. The company would save millions, but at the cost of hundreds of lives built on paychecks that barely held families together. He shoved the phone into his pocket as Sarah walked in, drenched from the rain, shaking water from her hair. "You look like someone told you Christmas got cancelled," she joked, smiling faintly. Daniel tried to return it, but his voice came out low. "Rough day." She sighed, settling beside him. "Tell me about it. My landlord's raising rent again. And Emily's tuition's due next week. If they cut even a single hour here, I don't know what I'll do." Her words landed like stones in his chest. She wasn't just a story, she was the reason he'd started to believe in something real. And now, his silence was about to destroy her. He wanted to tell her everything. Who he was. What he knew. What was coming. But truth felt like a grenade. Once thrown, it couldn't be taken back. "Hey," Sarah said softly, noticing the tension in his face. "Whatever's bothering you, you'll figure it out. You always do." He swallowed hard. "I hope so." Outside, thunder cracked, shaking the windows. Down the hall, Marcus gathered a few co-workers near the lockers, his voice hushed but firm. "I'm telling you, the new guy isn't one of us. You've seen it, his hands, the way he talks. I think he's corporate. Maybe here to spy before they fire us." The others exchanged uneasy glances. Doubt spread like a quiet virus. Back in the lounge, Sarah leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder, trusting him completely. He stared at the floor, guilt burning through him like acid. He wasn't just lying anymore. He was standing on the edge of betrayal. The company cafeteria had been transformed into a stage. Rows of folding chairs faced the podium where executives stood under bright white lights, announcing strategic operational improvements. The words sounded polished, harmless. But Daniel knew what they meant: outsourcing. He sat among his co-workers, his stomach in knots, the lie of his life sitting heavy on his chest. Sarah sat beside him, whispering, "I hope they don't cut night shifts." Her voice trembled with quiet worry. Daniel wanted to promise her she'd be fine, but he couldn't. Halfway through the meeting, Marcus raised his hand. "Before we start celebrating all these improvements, maybe we should talk about who's been spying on us." The room went still. Marcus stood, holding up a folder. "Dan Miller, right?" He smirked, voice steady and sharp. "That's funny, because I did some digging. Turns out there's no Dan Miller who ever worked here before this month. But there is a Daniel Whitmore. You know, the billionaire family that owns this company." Gasps rippled across the room. Sarah turned to Daniel, confusion flooding her face. Marcus dropped a photo onto the table, a screenshot of Daniel at a charity gala, smiling beside his father. "You came here pretending to be one of us. What were you doing? Taking notes? Reporting back to Daddy about how lazy the janitors are?" "Marcus, that's not..." Daniel tried, but his voice cracked beneath the noise. People shouted over him, "Liar! Spy! You used us!" Sarah's eyes glistened with betrayal. "Is this true?" "Sarah, please. I didn't come here to hurt anyone. I wanted to understand, to help." "To help?" she snapped, standing up. "You lied to my face. To all of us." Executives exchanged uneasy glances. The meeting had unraveled into chaos. Daniel tried to step forward, to explain the documents he'd found, the photos he'd taken to expose corporate greed, but every word drowned under the weight of anger. Tom looked away. Jorge's disappointment was louder than words. Security moved closer, sensing tension. Daniel's secret experiment, meant to bring him closer to truth, had blown apart in his hands. And as Sarah walked out, tears streaking her face, he realized he hadn't just lost their trust. He'd lost the only people who ever saw him as human. The mansion felt colder than it ever had. Daniel sat at the edge of his king-sized bed, staring at the city skyline beyond the glass walls. He was back in his world of wealth and privilege, but it all felt like a cage. The silence was deafening. His phone lay beside him, screen dark. 22 missed calls made, none returned. Sarah hadn't answered once. He couldn't blame her. Every word he'd said, every laugh they'd shared, had been painted over by his lie. Downstairs, the low murmur of his father's voice broke the quiet. "You've had your fun, Daniel," Mr. Whitmore said when he entered the study. "A janitor? Really? You humiliated this family." Daniel stood his ground. "I saw what our decisions do to people. Real people. You're cutting jobs for profit while families." "Families?" His father scoffed. "You don't understand business. This is how survival works. Those workers will find something else." "They won't," Daniel snapped. "They'll drown while we toast to our quarterly gains." Mr. Whitmore's expression hardened. "If you insist on making a spectacle of yourself, consider yourself cut off. No trust fund, no shares, nothing." For a moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. Thousands of photos, documents, and recorded meetings. Proof of negligence, of corruption, of the decisions made at the cost of human dignity. "I'm not trying to ruin you," he said quietly. "I'm trying to fix what we broke." His father's voice turned cold. "Then you're no son of mine." Daniel walked out without another word. The rain outside greeted him again, soaking through his clothes, washing away the last remnants of the life he'd been born into. Later that night, he drove past the company building. The parking lot was empty, most of the cleaning staff already gone. Through the glass doors, he saw Maria packing boxes, her eyes hollow. At a nearby diner, he caught a glimpse of Sarah through the window, wearing a new uniform, serving late-night customers with the same quiet strength. He wanted to go in, to explain, to apologize again, but he stayed in the car. She deserved peace, not promises. The Whitmore boardroom had never felt this tense. The air was sharp with polished confidence, men in tailored suits shifting uncomfortably as Daniel strode in, soaked from the rain, eyes unwavering. "Daniel," his father began, irritation laced with warning. "You're not scheduled for this meeting." "I know," Daniel said, placing a thick folder on the table. "But it's time someone unscheduled the silence." He opened his laptop, projecting photos of broken equipment, payroll delays, and signed memos authorizing the outsourcing. The screen flickered with evidence, proof of neglect and greed. The board murmured, faces pale beneath the fluorescent lights. "These," Daniel said steadily, are the lives we've chosen to ignore. The people who clean our offices, empty our trash, and make it possible for us to sit here pretending we built this empire alone. I won't be part of it anymore. His father's voice cut through the silence. And what exactly do you plan to do, son? Daniel took a deep breath. Stop the outsourcing. Raise the base pay. Create an anonymous feedback system. And start an education fund for employees who want to build better futures. And if we refuse, another board member sneered. He leaned forward. Then I take everything I've documented, and every share I own, to the press. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, heads nodded. The decision was unanimous. When the meeting ended, Daniel walked out, not victorious, but free. 2 weeks later, he returned to the same building where his masquerade had begun. The air smelled of bleach and hope. Workers whispered as he approached. Maria looked up first, cautious but curious. Sarah was there too, her eyes guarded, her posture proud. I came to apologize, Daniel said, voice low. Not to make excuses. I lied, and you had every right to walk away. But I meant what I said back then. I wanted to understand. And now, I want to make things right. Sarah studied him. Trust isn't fixed with promises, Daniel. It's rebuilt with proof. He nodded. Then I'll keep showing up until it's real. For the first time in months, she smiled, small, uncertain, but real. As he picked up a mop beside her, not out of disguise but respect, Daniel finally understood. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past, it was about earning tomorrow.